Welcome to the Phoenix Prosperity Podcast, where wealth meets legacy. Join your host, Tim Fergestad, as we explore the journeys of Phoenix's finest to success and beyond.
Hello, this is Tim Fergestad. Thank you for joining us. I'm very pleased to have Aaron Oakes with me here today. Aaron is the CEO of United Pet Care, a voluntary benefits company currently working with thousands of employer groups and vet practices nationwide with the mission of making world-class pet healthcare affordable and accessible to pet parents everywhere. Aaron is also the co-founder of Fetch Natural Pet Market. Prior to his time in the pet space, Aaron also worked with human healthcare in a variety of commercial leadership roles. Welcome to the show, Aaron.
Yeah, thanks for having me on, Tim.
You want to fill in some of the gaps there on that background?
Yeah, absolutely. Maybe most importantly, or interestingly on the personal side, my wife Raquel and I have two fur babies, and they were kind of our starter children. And honestly, the introduction for both of us into the pet space, what that kind of sparked that lit the interest on both businesses. And then we relatively recently welcomed two human babies as well. So
congratulations.
We have twins that are just about to turn 15 months old. So it's been a wild ride the last couple of years.
I imagine. Okay, starting with twins is always quite the change.
We have no frame of reference, which honestly I think was a blessing. This is just kind of how life has been. So
okay, yeah. Excellent. Well, are they generally on the same sort of schedules? Hopefully.
The biggest blessing has been one screaming bloody murder does not wake the other one up, even though they sleep in separate cribs about 18 inches from each other. So that's been what's kept all of us sane through the first year or so. And they're still relatively unpredictable, but for the most part, they're on the same schedule.
Okay. Wow. That's very cool. Very exciting. Congratulations again.
Thank you.
So where do you spend most of your time? Is it mostly the United Pet Care, and how did the pet market come about?
Yeah, absolutely. So my wife and I moved here about 6 weeks before COVID. And at the time she transferred, was working a corporate job, and I had started my own company. Both of those things, sob stories that don't register in the grander COVID scale, but got derailed a little bit.
Right.
So that actually kind of set us on a path to have a professional reset. And we said, where do we feel, our passion aligns with opportunity? One of the really kind of interesting second and third order effects of the pandemic was a very large number of people adopted a pet into their family. Yes. And for us, that was going from one dog to two. And it kind of got us interested. We just saw the trends across our peer group and some of the numbers nationwide that led us on a search to find a pet-related business that we could either start or acquire.
Yeah, we got a COVID cat. Yeah, we adopted a cat during COVID. I'm allergic to them, but they wore me down. And there's something about being trapped at home for that long.
100%. Yeah. I mean, honestly, for a good stretch there, the dogs were the only, kind of living creature besides each other that we saw on a regular basis. And for both of us moving to a new community, they were a great place to plug in, natural way to meet the neighbors, and quite honestly, a pretty meaningful component of both of our mental health during a pretty rough transition stretch. Sure. And so, kind of very long story short, we actually acquired, it wasn't called Fetch Natural Pet Market at the time, but acquired a pet store. It was an essential business, but the owner was just kind of looking to make a transition out and wanted to keep the legacy going. And so we bought that through an SBA loan together. And after about 3 months of operating it together, my wife kicked me out. She said, "Hey, thanks. You've been very helpful. I got this, go find your own thing." So to answer your question directly, I spend my time running United Pet Care, and then she has continued to run and grow Fetch Natural Pet Market I guess this is a Phoenix focused podcast. It's on 16th and Bethany Home, so I'll give my my shameless plug there.
Okay, no, that's great. Is it does it sound like maybe there's other locations?
As of now, it's just single location. Okay. So it's something that in the medium term future may be of interest, because there are actually that market in retail is very binary. It's a lot of very large big box retailers, PetSmart, Petco. our engagement in this actually started as consumers who were just trying to feed our pets intentionally the way that we fed ourselves, and found
Right.
out that there's not a lot of great options out there,
Okay.
and there's a lot of misinformation kind of mixed in with, kind of a very mixed bag of quality products. And then there's a lot
Okay.
of independent pet stores, typically founded as passion projects by folks. And so we
Right.
see potentially an opportunity down the road of more of these folks that eventually are going to be looking for a
Okay.
transition plan.
Okay. Okay. Excellent. Okay. So then I guess we can circle back to the business transitions and stuff. But do you want to share a little bit more about your United Pet Care?
Yeah, absolutely. So United Picker is a little bit of a unique concept, borrowing some elements from my time in the human healthcare industry. We are kind of structured like an HMO for fur babies. And so pet insurance, just the concept, is something that's gained a fair amount of traction over the course of the last 10 to 15 years. As now, I know you smiled a bit when you read the fur babies out, but that terminology has been started to use pretty intentionally. There are a lot of folks who are either delaying or kind of foregoing having children in
Sure.
lieu of pets. And
I have friends who they call them their fur babies for sure, 'cause they didn't have kids and they have their pets and they love them.
yeah, I've heard it said that plants are the new pets, pets are the new kids, and kids are the new exotic animals. You have to be rich and a little crazy to think about having kids in this day and age.
That's great. Thank you.
Yeah, and so kind of capitalizing on that trend, one thing that we realized was now a lot of employees, kind of the preponderance of the American workforce, actually have a pet at home, and more folks have veterinary bills than have vision care bills. So we distribute exclusively as a voluntary benefit offered by employers to their employees. And our kind of
Nice.
secret sauce is a lot of traditional insurance products don't cover a very wide swath of the pet population due to age, pre-existing conditions, breed-specific conditions, things like respiratory issues for French bulldogs, hip
Right.
dysplasia in labs. Quite
Right.
frankly, a lot of the things that you're ultimately going to spend money on
Right.
as pets age. And so our product kind of plugs that gap and offers a flat rate, guaranteed acceptance product that is good for any pet, regardless of age or any pre-existing health conditions.
Okay. Do you have challenges in that space negotiating rates with different places? Because I imagine that their time is more valuable for different procedures at different places, and what they want to charge can vary, I imagine, greatly.
Yeah, we do. It's a great question. So effectively, what we're building is a 2.5 sided network, right? Employers, and then ultimately their employees, pet parents on one side, and the vets on the other side.
Mm-hmm.
The first 2 years during COVID were probably the most difficult to convince veterinarians of the value of the program, because a
Mm-hmm.
lot of them, there are some structural shortages from a staffing perspective in the veterinary space. But COVID really put a big exclamation point on that because
Sure.
of the influx of the huge number of new pets. A lot of those who were bred, that was kind of the new early age is the second most care intensive stage of life after old age. And so there was this just massive influx, to which a vet would say, I can't even accept a new patient, let alone thinking about taking a discount on services.
Right.
That has certainly leveled out over the course of the last year or two. We've been
Okay.
very fortunate. We've grown our vet network by about 300% over the course of the last 4 years or so. And
Okay.
basically, that's around making a lifetime value pitch to our veterinary partners. So we have good data that show that our members on average aren't just kind of looking for a discount. They want to consume the best care possible for their
Okay.
animal, and especially doing so via preventative care and routine care, so that they
Sure.
can prevent those big problems down the road that end up being not just a financial burden to the pet owner, but also a really hard conversation with the vet, and a period during which the animal suffers during the interim.
Sure. And I would think that's a big selling point for people to want to sign up for a subscription model.
Exactly.
In general, is that they want right the consistent best care for their loved one.
Right. Yeah. What we kind of predicate on is our members are thinking about their pets in the same psychological motion as their children and themselves during the benefits time. So the
And
way that we
in fact,
administer,
they often treat them better than themselves.
absolutely. Yeah. Less talk back, depending on the breed. There are some.
No, but I mean, I've heard that they'll give like their complete medical regimen to an infected animal, whereas like for them, they'll take some of their pills and then they'll stop taking the rest of their dose of antibiotic or something. They aren't as vigilant on their own care as they are their pets.
It is interesting. Adherence is definitely an issue in the veterinary care space as well. I do think in some cases, you're right, they are much more likely to, but that is a challenge, just like as you point out in human medicine, veterinarians' recommendations aren't always adhered to. And a lot of times
Sure.
that burden is financial. And so that's
Sure.
where we try to plug the gap, reduce some of that financial anxiety around a trip to the vet so people go more often and can get ahead of some of these conditions to make adherence to care plans much
Sure. Sure. Well, you remind me of a joke, and this is not meant to be offensive. It was them talking about a headline on Weekend Update on Saturday Night Live when he was talking about how the first cat liver transplant was performed at the tune of like $30,000. He
Yeah.
said, which is only slightly more expensive than total cat replacement.
Yeah, that's right.
Which I
Uh,
mean, yeah, I don't know what the upper range of some of the care procedures available are nowadays.
so I tell you, where my first exposure, so as you mentioned, I used to work in what I now lovingly call non-pet healthcare. I worked for a radiation oncology company leading their marketing team, and that company went from doing about 2% of their sales in the veterinary space to today about 12 to 15%. It's the same pieces of capital equipment. Veterinarians are doctors. They go to medical school for an equivalent time period. They actually graduate on balance $250 to $300,000 in
Wow.
medical debt. They and dentists have the worst student debt to income ratio. So, it's a conflict just in human medicine where here, especially, we expect the highest standards of care. It's the same thing in animals, and the cost basis is not materially different. The meds are often the same, the equipment's the same, the doctors are, educated at the same level. So
Right.
to your question, the upper limit is, on the order of some of the human procedures. And so that's where, again, you get into that willingness to pay, which varies
Right.
a lot by state and, role of the animal and everything like that.
Yeah. Yeah. That's quite the challenge. So it sounds like business is going well, or both of the businesses are going well.
Yeah,
Um,
we've been fortunate to be growing pretty steady over the course of the last couple of years.
okay. And how was your? I like to ask people about their appetite for risk, right? Because when you're an entrepreneur and in just with success in general, it usually follows some failures and setbacks and so forth. And how has that changed over time for you?
Well, as you would imagine, a big inflection point came about 15 months ago, or about 7 months
Yeah.
before that, when we found out that we were pregnant. And so thinking about certainly creating some stability now that, as I say, our burn rate has increased significantly over the course of the last year and a half or so, definitely changes that profile. I mean, I would certainly say now that we are both in a semi-entrepreneurial role, and make no mistake, I'm still a W-2 employee, and so we're not fully out there in terms of not guaranteed income, but that's definitely shifted the profile where we've kind of, Raquel and I, my partner, have made a mutual agreement that there's an opportunity for one of us to be a little bit further out on that ledge while the other one is back, and fully
Okay.
recognizing that that can and probably will shift over time, where maybe for the next venture I take something that's a little bit less guaranteed income for higher potential upside, and then that's the time where she would have something kind of a little bit more traditional or stable.
Sure. Children change your risk appetite for sure. Sometimes it depends. It depends on what you need to provide for them and where you're currently at.
Yeah.
Um, and also, I think I was recently talking to somebody about how it generally, when you first hold your children, it really allows you to recalibrate your responsibilities and your goals and
Absolutely.
your commitments.
Yeah, and how you manage your time, which is really the most finite resource for all of us. And
For
I've
sure.
always been somebody that's been pretty heavily over-indexed on, working hard and leaning in. And while that is true, still true, my definition of high cost time and low cost time has definitely been dramatically redrawn over the course of the last year or so.
Oh, for sure. For sure. So with your success and growth comes new challenges. The question I like to ask a lot of people is how do you approach learning new skills and getting outside your comfort zone?
Well, I would say, one of the things I always tell my wife is that by virtue of owning a small business and being involved in every element, she's getting kind of an MBA on steroids. I got the more traditional version, but a lot of that doesn't necessarily survive first contact, with the real world. So we're both very lucky to still be pretty close to very close to the daily operations of our business, which present some kind of natural opportunities for learning. But I think from a zoom out perspective, one of the things that I've always viewed as life as a series of, kind of projects. That probably comes from starting my career as a consultant. And I think you can have a lot of those phases of growth and learning within the same professional opportunity, or potentially not. There are a lot of roles where you just kind of stagnate and level out. And so what she and I have both tried to focus on are not just things that are personally rewarding, because I firmly believe that how you wake up every day and spend most of your waking hours should be aligned with a personal mission that you can stand behind. But also, does that learning curve continue? And is there something that we can continue to find challenging and interesting in our opportunities that are in front of us?
Okay, excellent. And speaking of opportunities, that's kind of how these businesses, you've been able to pivot and take advantage of opportunities in markets and so forth. Can you talk a little bit more about your focus on business transitions and helping other people acquire or exit dispositions?
Yeah, so in both cases, United Pet Care and Fetch, these were entrepreneurship through acquisition opportunities. So we actually, one through an SBA loan, two with some United Pet Care with some backing of organized capital, made a transition from founders who were looking to exit the business and find somebody that could continue things on and scale. And so I've become very passionate about this because there are a lot of people who feel like they want to make that leap, but there's maybe some, de-risking that has to be involved. And one, just to note, certainly comes from, a point of relative privilege where we were able to qualify for an SBA loan and find those opportunities. So it may not be something that's immediately available to everybody, but certainly there is a huge generation of entrepreneurs probably running businesses that are relatively accessible from a financial perspective that are looking.
There's a lot of creative or seller financing available as well.
Exactly. Yeah, you have a lot of levers that you can pull too that can align incentives and things like that. And I do think it's something that, again, just kind of reflecting on my grad school experience, we didn't really talk about. There are a couple programs, Harvard, Stanford, the big brands that really have leaned into this lately. So it's kind of a lot bigger than it used to be. But I went to a really good school and it never kind of even entered into my consideration set that might be a possibility. So it's something I've gotten really interested in over the course of the last couple of years, as I know there are a lot of folks that are like me and my wife who have never had that, one idea that thinks like just over the top, we're going to start something from 0 to 1. And, for different risk tolerances, it may not be in the cards, but that are interested in that day-to-day experience of running and scaling a business. And ETA for us has really kind of bridged that gap.
Right. And so what are sort of the numbers here in the Valley of how many sort of opportunities for people who may want to exit in the coming 10 years, for example, that you might be able to capitalize on or help out with?
Oh man. So honestly, I couldn't speak to the number of businesses specifically within the Valley. I just know that Phoenix, and sounds like you've been here a while as well. Phoenix is very unique economically in that it's supported this, gigantic population base outside of, some real estate and maybe financial services without having kind of that flagship industry sector. One of the things I've been really encouraged by over the last, 5, probably even out to 10 years is the amount of new offices, maybe not headquarters, but companies that are starting to populate here. But underpinning that really is this really vibrant small business economy. We partner with the Arizona Small Business Association, we being United Pet Care, and I think they have 5,000 members. And so just again, using that as a small microcosm of the entrepreneurship landscape, there's a tremendous number of businesses that are, all probably under 5 million in revenue, or the majority, generally started by a solopreneur and then scaled into small teams. So it's a pretty sizable opportunity here for sure.
Okay, excellent. And thank you. And are you looking to grow multiple revenue streams through your businesses, or how are you planning for your future, right? And prosperity. This is the Phoenix Prosperity Podcast. I like to ask people about how they're moving forward with their prosperity and their maybe legacy plans.
Yeah. So the two, I would say, taken a little bit separately. So with Fetch, we own 100% of the equity. Path forward there, potentially scaling to multiple locations, and then transitioning to a more kind of a professional owner. On the United Pet Care side, we do have some financial backers, and when I think about where I am in my career, earning the confidence of professional investors is kind of tantamount to long-term success. I'm definitely more of an operator than an investor, and won't say always, but that's kind of where I find my joy and where I think where I spike. And so I really have loved this process and don't see any near-term end with United Pet Care. We've got a pretty amazing path for growth, but certainly as I think about longer term, to your question, it's would love to potentially do this again, and either same group of investors or new group of investors. And I just have really enjoyed the process of taking something that was in a pretty defined state and kind of redrawing the future for it.
Okay, right. It sounds like you're in a great spot or an exciting phase where you have the bandwidth to stay in operations and to grow, and keep and then redeploy that energy into the next project as it comes. I also think that United being where you're working with companies to offer these programs directly, right? Whenever you can get at that level of subscription or commitment from people, I think that's huge. And so how long have you been at that stage, or what's the word for that? When the benefit level of employers being able to offer this service?
Yeah, so that honestly, I'll credit the vision of the founder, Doris. She worked for a dental, like a DHMO plan, and a lot of people don't realize, but that's actually how most of these dental products are structured. It's actually a negotiation off of services versus a true insurance product. And so she had that vision, from the mid '90s on. And so yeah, that's always been United Pet Care's primary distribution mode, and probably will be for the foreseeable future.
Yeah, it's a great model.
Yeah, to your point, and then you get some of this evergreen as you get a new job and people cycle in, and we do offer the ability to port that benefit. So if you leave your employer, you can stay on the plan, and then obviously we have a new sales opportunity that comes when somebody backfills that role.
Okay, excellent. Well, you're having an impact on pets and their owners here in the Valley, as well as planning for your own growing family. That's awesome.
Yeah, that's a hope.
Okay, so I guess a lot of the questions I have on financial planning, the stability and growth are leaning towards legacy and multiple streams of income and things like that. Reflecting on your path to date, what do you wish you knew earlier about building success earlier in your career?
I would say, to your earlier comment about that risk profile changing over time, and maybe I don't certainly regret any step I made in the career, but I think you can have a narrowly defined vision of success early in your career and almost an artificial self-constraint around failure early on. And I think the thing that seems to unify just successful people in general, but certainly successful entrepreneurs, is that tolerance level for failure. Because if you're completely afraid to fail, you're not taking the bat off the shoulder for those further afield opportunities. And very serendipitous kind of chain of events, but really ultimately what drove both of our current businesses today was we moved from Atlanta to Phoenix. I left a very comfortable corporate job that compensated well to try to start my own company. And that was a huge risk. And we didn't have any kids. And to be honest, if I had waited another 2 years to do that and we had kids, I probably never would have. And it's not a bad path to take by any stretch of the imagination, but life would look very different. And I think personally I would be a lot less satisfied with where I was had I kind of continued to march up that, got to get that next corporate opportunity and the next after that. So I think going back, I probably would have told myself to relax a little bit and trust in the process, the education that I've earned, the work experience, in that, there's there's generally a fallback opportunity. If you try something and it doesn't work out, you can kind of reinsert yourself into that process. Maybe you give up a couple of years, maybe you have to take a step back. That's, sometimes that's not always a given, but I would say that's probably the biggest thing, is just kind of, convincing myself that a broader view of success early on and a tolerance for failure would open up more opportunities.
100%. And you learn, just switching fields is so educational, right? If you're into your own personal growth is big. That's what I've experienced myself when
Absolutely
making a big pivot. Okay, excellent. So what's next for you? What are your plans for United, and do you have any other big projects on the horizon?
So we're enjoying things, and again, very fortunate to be growing over the course of the next couple of years. We're about 3 years into the hold period, which is pretty, I want to say relatively early days. So that will, likely for the foreseeable future, occupy a lot of, time and bandwidth. And, on the Fetch side, we have that kind of existential question, to your point on bandwidth of, we've got this family now. We're very fortunate the one store affords Raquel to spend some time, outside of the daycare hours with our kids, and that's been really important and valuable to both of us. So there's an open question as to, what the right balance of pressing the gas a little bit harder there versus not. From a kind of personal standpoint, we have and maybe to your question about some of the prosperity and multiple streams of income, we have been doing some kind of small scale investment in single family properties and things like that to help try to raise the floor from an income perspective, and also potentially open up more opportunities down the road. So probably some continued growth in that. Obviously, interest rates staying fairly high for a little bit longer than maybe most folks expected early on, put a somewhat of a governor on that. But we try to keep an open mind. And, to your point, I think just being responsive to opportunities as they present themselves is so important. We try to, not keep the blinders on too much about interesting things that might be coming down the pike.
Absolutely. There's a lot to be said for being flexible, all right, and listening to the market and being prepared for opportunities. And to your point on maybe some more passive income versus active income, that's exactly why I started doing single families back in the day, and why a lot of my investors like the diversification, right? So they want some real estate in their portfolio, but there's not a lot of real estate that's really passive, right? And you've been a landlord from afar, and you have probably some property management help in those markets, but it's still not the same thing as some of the stuff that I focus on now for that same reason. It's nice to have some passive income without the headache of being a landlord.
Yeah, I understand that. Absolutely.
All right. Well, thank you, Aaron, for being on the show today. Thank you for watching, everybody. For our listeners who want to learn more about you or connect, where can they find you?
LinkedIn, probably the easiest, or www.unitedpetcare.com. Fetch has a website as well, fetchaz.com, or swing by the store. And sometimes she'll still put me to work on weekends, helping out around the store and general handyman work. But probably the easiest point. If you're an employer listening that's interested in offering the benefits, shoot us a note. We do work with about 400 different employers across the Valley and the broader state of Arizona, in addition to most other states as well.
Okay, excellent. Well, thank you very much, Aaron, and very much appreciate you sharing your stories and your insights into success and pet impact and human impact. Thank you.
Yeah, thanks for the time, Tim.
Inspired by our guests? Visit PhoenixProsperityPodcast.com/guest and join us on the show and share your success story with Tim. The spotlight awaits.